And Rob, there was, of course, some big. I wouldn't even say. I mean, they were rumors. I would say I would go with that. Rumors about what happened in regards to the UFL draft and the Renegades drafting quarterback Lindsey Scott, trading up to grab him. Ever since that happened, people have been speculating that the Renegades, the Arlington Renegades, already have a quarterback in Luis Perez that won them the XFL championship last year. Why are they drafting a quarterback, especially a top prospect quarterback? There was some rumors that there may be a potential trade for, a team that may be needing a quarterback. So, Rob, the Renegades should not trade Lindsey Scott. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think this is a buckle winner. There's a couple of reasons. One, I think most of the time in these spring league football drafts, the players you're getting are not necessarily great. I mean, they're in they're in the spring league for a reason, and a lot of the established players in the spring league who are really good are already on teams. And so I feel like it's rare for a player coming out of college or whatever to choose the spring league over the NFL and actually, be capable of being a productive and talented player. So I'm not saying it never happens, but I think it's a lot more rare in a spring league football draft than it would be in the NFL draft. Lindsey Scott is one of those rare cases where I feel like you got a player who could be super talented, play really well, not just in the spring league, but also in the NFL. Because he played super well in college. It's just that, he wasn't playing against the best competition. So he never really got a chance to show what he could do against higher level teams, and that's why he's not in the NFL right now. It seems like to me he has all the talent in the world,
Yeah.
and he's young and he's exciting and he's a great player. But that does kind of raise the question of what do you do with Luis Perez then? Well, I think Luis Perez obviously won us a championship last year, but I think what is the only fair way to approach this is to have a quarterback battle in training camp and see which of the two quarterbacks performs the best. If Luis Perez, is still that championship winning quarterback, if he is still the guy from last year, then I think he'll have no problem outdueling Lindsey Scott. But if Lindsey Scott comes in and he's playing like the better guy, um, I think you got to keep him and I think you got to put him in. Even if he doesn't play like the better guy right out of the gate, just because he's so new, that's fine. But he's super talented and exciting, like I said. So let's say you play Luis Perez for 4 or 5 games and things aren't really working out. I think having that in your back pocket, being able to say, okay, well, we're going to put this dynamic young guy in instead and see what happens is really, really valuable. And I think it's much more valuable than nearly anything you could get in return for a trade. The only way I would say a trade is worth it is if you take Lindsey Scott and you trade him for like one of the better players in the UFL. Like if you took Lindsey Scott and traded him for like Jahcour Pearson or one of those guys, like one of those established like UFL superstars, then I would be comfortable with that. But outside of a trade for a UFL like really talented player, which I don't think is going to happen, I don't think it's realistic. I think it just makes more sense to keep Lindsey Scott because you don't really know what you have in him until you play him. And I think the Renegades would really regret it if they sent him to another team and then he ended up being like one of the better, if not the best quarterback in the entire league.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I agree. I think that this is, a buckle winner take. Um, and the reason, is for a lot of the things that you just mentioned, Rob. I think that, you have a dominant quarterback in Luis Perez, who is arguably probably one of the best quarterbacks in spring football, has proven himself multiple leagues, multiple teams, won the big game for Arlington last year. And you know, having another guy who has a lot of potential in Lindsey Scott on your roster um, provides for not only a sense of quarterback battle, but it gives you a little bit of a safety blanket if something happens to Perez, God forbid. But also, at this time, I don't think the Renegades should do anything about trading Lindsey Scott. Maybe later in the season, maybe that could be something, or even later down the road, maybe we're talking next season. Um, you know, I think with the UFL launching with this kind of new combined format with the USFL and the XFL, I think we're going to start to see the shapings of what we see in the NFL in terms of player worth and who's going to be standout and whatnot. And having a guy like Lindsey Scott as kind of like a trade partner or a trade pawn for later on um, is a key asset. And so right now it makes no sense for them to trade because there is, as you mentioned, those some of those players in the spring league, you don't know their full potential. You may be like, oh well, last year they played in the XFL and did this. Well, that's only 1 year. And for some of the USFL players that maybe played 2 years in a row, obviously their resume is a little bit longer, but still, there's still a lot of question marks, a lot of uncertainty with these rosters, especially with today, March 10th, uh, being the time where they're going to even be cutting from 75 to 57. So we're going to see a lot of movement. But yeah, I agree. I think this is a buckle winner take. They should not trade Lindsey Scott. But I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility for a later trade, maybe next season.
I wouldn't even put it out of the realm of possibility for right now before the season starts because I know there's a lot of rumors swirling that that's the whole reason they drafted him was just to trade him for more than they spent to draft him. Um, but like I said, I just think it'd be much smarter to keep him because Luis Perez, as much as I love him, he has been inconsistent at times in his career, and he is like getting up there in age. So he's probably not the guy of the future just because of he's in his 30s now, and he's been inconsistent at times in the past. And I love Luis Perez so much. He's probably my favorite spring league football player ever. But you got to plan for the future, and Lindsey Scott is the future of your team,
Yeah.
not Luis Perez. And I think, if that future starts this season, fine. But if you're looking at future seasons, having a guy like Lindsey Scott, who probably should have been in the NFL, but's in the spring league instead and is young and exciting and dynamic, is the most valuable thing you can have at the most important position. And I think it would take a lot for the Renegades to move on from Lindsey Scott.
Yeah. And Lindsey Scott could be a Jordan Love equivalent where he's taking some time, learning the scheme, learning stuff. And then when his shot comes, there we go. You plug him right in. So yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, or like Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes.
Mhm.
You never know what's going to happen with those younger guys once they sit behind an experienced veteran who can teach them the ropes. I think it's the perfect dynamic. I think Lindsey Scott will learn a ton from Luis Perez, and I think that'll make him a better player. Speaking of UFL news, we mentioned before that Jahcour Pearson, the notable wide receiver for the UFL Battlehawks, was recently injured and will be sidelined for most of the season with a knee injury, probably going on IR for a while. So, Carson, I think the Battlehawks will not be a dominant offensive team because of this injury to Pearson.
I'm going to say that this is a bucked off take. It's a little, obviously, there is some truth to it because you're taking this dynamic receiver with everything he was able to do with Seattle last in the XFL season, clearly was one of the top prospects at wide receiver in gaining for any team. The Battlehawks, I'm sure, and Battlehawks fans were super stoked to have him on the roster. And so, yes, I think that there is some now limitations with him being out for a couple weeks, but I don't think that that's going to remove the offensive threat that St. Louis has. And you have AJ McCarron, who's your quarterback. You still have Hakeem Butler, who probably is going to be stepping up into that wide receiver one with Pearson's injury. And you have a plethora of other offensive weapons to go around. And so that being the case, you have this kind of um this ability that yes, you lost a top receiver. Hopefully he comes back strong from that knee injury, but you have still other weapons. Whether that's, Austin Prohl, who did super well last season as well. You still have these players in place on the offensive side of the ball for St. Louis, that your offense is still going to be clicking. AJ McCarron, Prohl, and Hakeem Butler, they were all rocking it with St. Louis last season. So there's already some chemistry between those three guys. So yes, it is going to set them back a little bit, but I still think out of all the other teams in the UFL, the Battlehawks still have probably one of the most dominant offenses. So I think even though they are losing Pearson for, I know Coach Anthony Becht said approximately 6 weeks. So 6 games he's going to be probably out for. I really think that Butler, Prohl, and McCarron are going to be able to hold things down until he returns. So yeah, I think this is a bucked off take. I think the Battlehawks will still be dominant offensively.
See, I think this is a buckle winner. I think
Oh,
the Hawks will still have a good offense like they did last year, but I think the Jahcour Pearson signing was going to take them to the next level. Like
absolutely.
having all three of those guys on their wide receiver room, all playing at the same time with one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the UFL throwing them the ball. I think that was going to be an offense that broke records for, any spring league that's ever existed. It's going to be like the greatest show on turf, but in spring league instead of the NFL.
Yeah.
Not having Pearson, I feel like kind of brings them back down to earth a little bit. I still think they'll probably have one of the best, if not the best, offense in the league this year, just because they have two really great wide receivers still and a great quarterback. But I think with Pearson on the field, it will be absolutely another level. That's like just unimaginable right now. Pearson, in my opinion, is the best wide receiver in the UFL right now. I thought he was absolutely, electric with the Sea Dragons last year. And I think putting him on the field with two other absolutely dominant wide receivers and a dominant quarterback is just going to make it impossible for teams to defend them. And I think when Pearson comes back, week 7 or whatever, that's when you will see the Battlehawks start to absolutely just dominate everyone. I think it'll be almost an impossible team to beat once they have that wide receiver trio. If they manage to get all three of those guys on the field healthy at the same time, I think they'll look completely different without him as they will with him. I think they'll still be really good. I just don't know if I'll say they're dominant without Jahcour Pearson on the field.
Thank you for joining us on the Redzone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe. Check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or buts. This is the best place for your football news.